January 25th, 2007, and another edition of In the Paint, only here on CBS Sportsline. Hey, how are you? Jason Horowitz, glad you could join us on this week's edition of the show. Bill Raftery will join us from his home, away from home down in West Palm Beach in just a moment. Before we get to that, we want to let you know what's coming up on this week's show, and we're going to start with the Big East and the tide that isn't ebb and flowing. Of course, the top of the biggest conference in the country, and then, well, the SEC, it's just mixed up. That being, of course, Tuscaloosa with the Tide. Also on the show, the game of the week on CBS. What is it? We'll let you know. And then, of course, what's off the radar? The quick hits, 3 teams that you may not be thinking about, but definitely should be, whether they are tournament teams, whether they aren't. But before we get to that, let's bring in Bill Raftery from West Palm Beach. And, Bill, before we get going here, this last week we talked about me having my tournament hat on to be on the selection committee. You've been around this a lot longer than I have. Are the games at the end of January, beginning of February, maybe a little bit more important than some of the ones that they've already played?
Well, there's always talk about getting better late, who you play coming down the stretch, how successful you've been, and then as you get into your tournament, your league tournament, they do weigh a great amount. But, it's the whole process, though. It's December through the end of the year, and I think the quality of opponents in December come into play when it's a question of who should go and who should not go.
Well, a team that doesn't usually play high-quality opponents in November or December, that being Pittsburgh. But, of course, when they get into Big East schedule, they get all kinds of high-quality opponents. Let's take a look at the Big East standings so far, 1 through 8 at least so far, the top half. And Pittsburgh, 6-1, followed by Marquette, who just beat Pittsburgh to give the Panthers their only loss. Syracuse, Georgetown, Louisville, and so on down the list to Villanova. But let's start with the top cat in the Big East, and that being Pittsburgh. Break down the Panthers for us, Bill.
Well, this is an impressive team, and they have gone out of Pittsburgh, by the way. Don't be tough on Jamie now. They're out at Oklahoma State, of course, in Oklahoma City. But, this is a team that's impressive up front. And having said that, they rely on some perimeter shooting as well. Fields runs the team. Levance is a New York City kid, really understands the game, gives it up, can make long shots, a peculiar delivery, but effective. Ramon is a guy, Ramon, that can shoot the deep shot. They run a lot of stagger screens for him. But it's the player of the year, preseason player of the year, Aaron Gray, that is so important. He's an excellent passer. He handles doubles extremely well. He's got a great touch with either hand. He hooks. He turnaround jump shot, knows how to finish. And Levon Kendall is a very impressive forward. Does all the little things that you look for in a player. He does a lot of screening. He can make an open shot. He passes extremely well. He takes the best guy on the offensive end of the opponent. So they have a very solid team with a very formidable bench as well.
Yeah, they're very balanced, Bill. They have 5 scorers that all range up to Aaron Gray leading the way, but they are very balanced across the bowl. And I didn't mean they didn't play anybody out of conference this year. I just meant in general, Pittsburgh usually doesn't play.
One guy Cook is another guy that's an add-on from coming up from East Carolina who has done a heck of a job for them. So they have a lot of components. And, I think it's all about defense with them and Gray staying on the floor. I think that's important. He does get some small change fouls during the course of a game. And come tournament time, they get a little picky early in the game. He's got to be careful.
Yeah, that happens when you've got a big 7-footer. All right, before we move on, let's take a look at the bottom half of the Big East standings as they set as Thursday afternoon. Big East 9 through 16. And, well, you see UConn down there. If the Big East tournament were to start today, obviously it doesn't. And UConn could be a scary team come later in the season because they are so young. We've talked about them before. But they would not be in the Big East tournament if it started today. That, of course, could change. All right, Bill, I know we did it last week with Kentucky, but let's shift focus again to the SEC this week because it's really upside down. The last 2 days alone, Georgia beat Kentucky. Vandy won at LSU. Arkansas lost at South Carolina. Tennessee having all kinds of problems without Chris Lofton. They were upset at Ole Miss. And the team I want to focus on here is Alabama. They got routed by Auburn. Take a look at the last 6 games, Bill. They're just so inconsistent. After a 13-1 start, they're now 15-4. But it's not that they're losing. It's the fact that they're getting blown out.
I'm impressed you know all those games. You're an amazing. You're the new wizard for me. Alabama's an interesting team because they struggle on the road. I mean, they not only struggle, they occasionally are beaten badly. Arkansas jumps to mind, Vandy another one, and then that loss the other night to Auburn. They've got to learn how to win on the road, and they're perplexed, they being the coaching staff. Mark Gottfried concerned because of the amount of points they're giving up away. I mean, they're just not as solid defensively, and I think that all starts with Ronald Steele. He is not as mobile as he once was. He's been injured. Last year it was his back, his leg, and now it's his ankle. He just can't blow by people, and conversely, they go to a lot of zone now, and I think they give up more points for that reason. Guys are able to offensive rebound. The open shooters they're not getting out on. But up front, this is a terrific, they could be one of those 8-9 games where everybody's looking forward to it because Alonzo G is one of those guys that's starting to become a terrific player, more prominent. We always talk about Davidson up front. Hendricks, another guy we've talked about. But you forget about G and Riley. Mikhail Riley is a guy that makes shots. They have a lot of answers. It's just right now they're not putting them together.
Right. It's interesting you mentioned the Arkansas game. They'll get their chance for redemption this week, and when Arkansas comes to Tuscaloosa. Interesting about Alabama. Haven't you said they're tough on the road, or they're having a hard time on the road? They are undefeated so far at home this season. And by the way, for more on the SEC and Vanderbilt, be sure to check out the Power Performances presented by Courtyard by Marriott. All right, Bill, let's get into the game of the weekend. It just so happens to be on CBS. You've got a talented and young North Carolina team. They like to go up and down the floor. Talented and young Arizona team. They like to go up and down the floor. Break it down.
Jason, this is like an old ABA game. There are going to be a lot of points. The one thing that Carolina does, they guard, and I don't think Lute's very happy with his defense. I'll see them in another couple of weeks. I saw them earlier in the year. But offensively, Chase Budinger is a terrific-looking player. He's going to be a great talent as the years go on. I think he's learning about concentrating on that defensive end. And then conversely, Wright is one of the terrific players in the country, Brandon Wright. So they're two rookies. Going into one of these games, I expect them to respond. But to me, Marcus Williams, who's the leading scorer for Arizona, can fill it up. He's the guy that's got to be constant, along with Mustafa Shakur. He's got to run the offense, get other people involved. But the other guy that jumps to me, Tyler Hansbrough, plays with a passion that I haven't seen in many years. He reminds me a little bit of Dave DeBusschere when he was at Detroit, and then, of course, they played for Detroit and the Knicks in the Pro League. But great rebounder. He looks possessed when the game starts, and I think he's the key to this team. I just think they respond beautifully to him. And then you got Lawson in the backcourt. Danny Green, a local kid from Long Island there, is a kid that comes in and does a solid job defensively, rebounding and making plays. I'm looking forward. This is going to be one of the great games of the season.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's almost like a tournament game at the end of January. Arizona, by the way, up a win over Arizona State, and it snapped a 3-game conference skid. For more on that game, be sure to read about it here on CBS Sportsline. All right, Bill, let's go to the quick hits and get through it quickly. Let's start with Washington State. Just off a 28-point win over Washington. They have Oregon State Thursday night and then a Pac-10 showdown at Oregon.
Well, Tony Bennett did not leave his heart in Madison, Wisconsin. He took it with him to Pullman. He's done a great job. Of course, the dad, known for a little bit of a slowdown, controlling defensively. Tony has a little of that in his game, but he's opened it up a little bit. Beating Washington was just terrific. Kyle Weaver had a great game for them. Cal Gill is another kid, 6'10", who does a good job rebounding. Derek Lowe, another one of their players. But this team's going to make the NCAA tournament. They've been able to prove it against very tough teams, and they always hang in games. And I think it's almost that old Chuck Daly philosophy: hang in there, and you can steal one at the end. And I think they're confident on the road to be able to do that as the year progresses.
I would agree with you on that one. All right, let's move on to the next one, and that being Oklahoma, and a team that, well, under first-year head coach Jeff Capel. What are your thoughts about what he has done with the Sooners so far this season?
Most impressive, because I saw them in Maui. They were struggling. I saw some of their games in December. They didn't play Villanova very well at home. But right now, they're a confident group. They're undersized. That's part of Longar had been suspended for 2 games. He's back now the last 2 or 3 games, and he's coming along slowly. But Taylor Griffith up front is a tough kid. The key to their team, Nate Carter. This kid did not score much in December and early to the league starts. He is on a tear right now. He had 24 points the other night. Of course, they put Marcus Dubb on him and slowed him down in the second half, which helped Oklahoma State win that game. But they've improved defensively. As I mentioned, rebounding is a problem for them, but they do compete, and they give everything to this coaching staff. And Jeff Capel's got to be proud of his kids, and I know he is.
And, of course, rebounding Bill could be a definite problem when they play at Texas A&M on Saturday. All right, our thanks to Bill Raftery for joining us in the paint each and every week. We will be sure to catch up with him next Thursday here on CBS Sportsline. Don't forget, In the Paint, always on demand right here on this website and YouTube as well. For Bill Raftery, I'm Jason Horowitz. See you next time. Take care.